We talk about Project Veritas a lot on this channel. And last time I mentioned the concept of a whistleblower economy, which is sprouting forth right under our noses. And I'm going to say this many times throughout this video. I don't know if I think this is a good thing or a bad thing. It's just really fascinating to me to watch this happen. This is new to my eyes. And something that I said in the last video where I talked about April Moss and Ivory and Joy. Something I mentioned in the last video was the concept that jamais deux sans trois, as the French expression goes, you will never have two of something without having a third. Well, this Sunday, Project Veritas dropped a video with a new whistleblower, and we will get into the details of that. However, what's really interesting about this particular one is that it regards another issue which we have talked about on this channel before, which is critical race theory. So I would like to introduce you to David Johnson. David Johnson is a packaging engineer for Hasbro. And before you laugh at that, package design is serious business, especially when you're in the toys industry. So yeah, I just wanted to say that as someone who listens to design podcasts, packaging and how to design a package is it's a serious discipline. So let me just play a couple clips from this Project Veritas video, and we will discuss them. The first one shall be this one.
My name is David Johnson. I'm a packaging engineer for Hasbro. They are attempting to covertly push CRT, critical race theory, through branding and messaging through their products. I decided to come to Project Veritas because I opposed the indoctrination of children that they wanted to push.
Explain what we're looking at here.
This is the program developed by the Conscious Kid, which is working with Hasbro to teach children about racial bias at an early age.
Is this a mandatory all-hands training?
Yes, it was mandatory for me.
Children as young as 2 are already using race to reason about people's behaviors.
2-year-old racists is just an absurd concept.
By 3 to 6 months, babies are beginning to notice and already express preference by race. By age 3, children are already starting to apply stereotypes. They also may use racist language intentionally at this age.
I think this is where the mask starts to slip a little bit.
Is this what people are talking about regarding critical race theory?
This is critical race theory in practice. They explain that the white children in particular have the particular bias against black people. It's a mainstream ideology now, and it's in a lot of our institutions. People that I've
All right. Well, we're not going to watch the whole thing, but there was a lot to unpack in that. The first thing is the notion of young children using intentionally racist language. The key question that I would ask these trainers if I had them in front of me, which might have been addressed in the training, but I suspect that even if it was, it wouldn't be addressed to our satisfaction, which is, what is racist? What do they consider to be racist? Now, what we just saw, that was like the highlight reel before the actual interview begins. So let me just skip to another timeline here, another timestamp. So remember when I spoke of the whistleblower economy in my last video, I mentioned how the part of what makes whistleblowing a courageous act is that you're risking like your livelihood to expose your employer's wrongdoings. And with what Project Veritas is doing, it kind of enters into the consideration that one might go through when pondering whether or not to blow the whistle. So I just want to make one thing clear by playing this segment here.
need to know this is being pushed onto their children.
And have you ever done this before, like blown the whistle, recorded, and published?
Never.
But it occurred to you instantly to do it.
Yes.
Had you seen what we had done previously or known about whistleblowers?
I've known about Project Veritas for a little while, and I've seen some of your previous whistleblowers, and I've always thought it was just amazing that people would step forward and just risk everything to just get a message across.
So yeah, in his defense, just to be super charitable here, when he said he'd seen the last couple whistleblowers, that might not necessarily mean Ivory or Joy. So that might not be it. But if he is talking about those two ladies, the notion of risking everything, it's the game has changed, and this is the sad thing about this, because again, I want to live in a world where if you know your boss is doing something shady, that you can feel that you can tell people and not necessarily put your livelihood at risk, right? And in fact, be pretty well off. However, for each subsequent whistleblower that Project Veritas does this with, it's going to be harder and harder to be charitable towards these people, and to think that that they're not necessarily doing it for the money, because we will look into those numbers in a second. But I really want to focus on the contents of the video here. So let me skip to this other timestamp where we will. I'll have a little more to say on this, because this is the actual brunt of it.
Let's take a look at the tape of the training.
I think we
that
should.
you recorded.
By 3 to 6 months, babies are beginning to notice and already express preference by race. There was research that looked at how by 6 months, infants living in a homogeneous or same race neighborhood showed preferences for faces from their own racial groups, whereas infants living in more racially diverse environments did not show that same preference for their own racial group. And this is really important because we see that early.
So yeah, like I don't know where these people are coming from, but the notion that young infants, 3 to 6 months old, they're not even 1 yet, that they have a preference for faces and people who look like mommy and daddy as far as skin color is concerned, that makes sense. And I have no trouble believing that this is documented. The problem that I have is, like, are we calling this, like, is it racist? I think it's really weird to imbue the notion of racism on a 6-month-old, even though and they alluded to this in the very clip that we're talking about. If all you have around you are people who look like mommy and daddy, then yeah, it would make sense that you feel safe around people who look like mommy and daddy. Let us continue.
Exposure to different races is impacting these preferences before babies are even 1 year old. Children as young as 2 are already using race to reason about people's behaviors, and we may see this play out in daycare or on the playground, and in how kids are starting to choose or exclude playmates and friends.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought that was weird too. I don't know enough about this particular thing to comment, but let's continue, because I got more to say once we climb up the age ladder.
By 2 years old, quote, already using race to reason about people's behavior, and they exclude kids on playgrounds.
Yeah.
Shocking.
2-year-old racists is just an absurd concept. I don't think at 2 years old, most of them know how to read or write. Many of them may, well, I would hope they know the alphabet by 2, but I think it's absurd to just state as fact that at 2 years old, the children are going to be racist and using race to reason about who they're going to play with and discriminating based on.
Actually, let me read a couple of these chats here. You are still stepping out of your current career path. You have to forego your ideology. Yeah, that's a fair point. Like, my my only concern, and again, I don't know yet if I think this is a good or bad thing. It's just that the financial incentives, at least with Project Veritas, have changed from, financial risk to financial opportunity, and it's just too new to me. It's tribal. You feel safe with your tribe. Yep, exactly, Darth Shady. You also have to change your career paradigm because you're not the IT person for very long. I'm assuming that's IT. Yeah, that's fair, Breck. It's still a big risk he's taking, although previous ones were able to monetize. The more whistleblowers there are, the less likely the public will voluntarily offer big donations. Ooh, Frank, we will circle back to this. So, big donations is one thing, but crowdfunding is another thing. Crowdfunding is a bunch of people offering tiny donations. And I think it's fair to question how long this gravy train will last. And of course, you don't need that many whales to compensate for that. But yeah, we'll look at the numbers in a second. Don't you worry. All right, let's continue.
By age 3, children are already starting to apply stereotypes, and research shows that they also may use racist language intentionally at this age.
Okay, again, what is racist? Because unless your parents are racist, it's difficult for me to imagine a 3-year-old saying something that anyone would agree is racist intentionally. I'll just point that out now. Let's continue.
And white children at this age may report explicit or overt negative attitudes towards people of color. So already by age 3, this can happen. By age 4, kids are showing a strong and consistent pro-white, anti-black bias. And at this age, it is seen in the research really significantly against Black boys, but this anti-black bias occurs across gender at this age. At the age of 5, children show many of the same racial attitudes held by adults. By this age, children are really also sensitive to the status of different racial groups in our society and show a high status bias towards white people, which is the socially privileged group in our society. White children show pro-white bias at this age, and it's really important to note also that Black and Latinx children do not show the same.
Latinx. We have someone using Latinx. Of course they will. Cringe.
Preference for their own racial groups at this age.
This is just absolutely absurd to just state categorically that at 5 years old, your children are as racist as the adults, which is implying that the parents are also racist in some manner. I just think it's absurd. I don't know how they don't see it as discriminatory to group an entire race of people, like how they explain that the white children in particular have the particular bias against Black people. And it's like children develop things based on what they're taught. And if they're going to be teaching this to children, then yes, you're going to have more children with a racial mindset because you're teaching children to have a racial mindset. And
okay, so just before we continue, I just wanted to elaborate on something because I'm old enough. I'm old enough to know firsthand what those slides might have been talking about. This hasn't happened in a long time, okay, but especially back in the 90s and maybe the early 2000s, whenever I would leave the Montreal area and, go in, let's say, either a more rural area like a small village or maybe even a tourist town like Saint-Sauveur, which is, a popular tourist attraction where people come to go skiing. When I would go to, let's say, a restaurant or walking down the street, it's happened several times that some toddler would look at me like I'm an alien and just stare at me. And I'm like, oh, I'm clearly the first Black person this kid's ever seen. And does it suck? Yeah, kinda. But is it racist? No. It like, unless we're talking about like the systemic shit, but like, yeah, I get how if some 5-year-old has never seen a black person before, that they would like stare and you know, just it's not malicious. It would be crazy to assign malice to that. But yeah, I've seen it happen like a lot. Again, not in a long time because you know the diversity is you know, becoming more and more spreading out of the urban areas and into rural areas. But yeah, the whole notion of I think they said like pro-white, anti-black bias, that is an extremely uncharitable rephrasing of something that would probably be akin to, you know, some toddler staring at the first black person they've ever seen in their life as if they're an alien. Yeah, that, you know, children are fascinated by new things. So, yeah. All right. I just wanted to go on that rant. I think we have 2 more timestamps to go through. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, Darth Shady, it's probably curiosity. It's definitely curiosity that, like, again, it kind of sucks. I mean, being stared at in general kind of sucks, but to assign malice to that, especially to a toddler like who's 5 or younger, is madness. Absolute madness. All right.
And when I was growing up as a child, I had a mixed race group of friends, and this never came up. Children don't naturally just look at each other based on their race unless they're taught it. And these people are teaching children to be racist.
Through Hasbro.
Yeah, they want to use Hasbro to push more of this ideology. And this isn't happening in just a vacuum, but it is happening at Hasbro.
Yeah, so the reason I wanted to let that clip play a little longer is because, like, he said so himself. Like, when he was growing up with a diverse group of friends. So of course that shit never came up. Like his friends saw people from all sorts of races early on. So yeah, why would you think in those terms if, you know, you're, let's say, 10 years old or younger and you have friends from all sorts of different races? It wouldn't make much sense to think of them in terms of race. It's just Tom, not Tom the Mexican kid, and you know, Joe the Chinese kid. It's just Joe, and it's just Tom. If you grow up like that, it absolutely makes sense that subjects like that would never arise. You know. Let me skip to another. Oh man, okay, this one's a doozy. Let's go.
It uses a Marxist lens to look at people as oppressed and oppressors. And then in critical race theory specifically, it divides people who have whiteness as the oppressor and people who lack it as the oppressed. And no matter what, you are split between those two groups. So it's inherently divisive.
There's a pretty definitive conclusion they've come up with. You say this type of labeling can be weaponized against all races.
Oh, for sure.
Not just black people.
So when they say whiteness, generally they do just want to refer to white people, but they will also extend that to anyone who speaks out against critical race theory. You'll often hear that you have implicit whiteness, or you are defending it, or they've called people race traitors, but
Race traitors.
You get some pretty bad slurs if you speak up against this. I've been called a coon. I've been called some nasty things.
By whom?
Just by random people that I've spoken to about these issues, and I'm trying to explain to them why teaching people to segregate based on race or by gender or by any other inherent characteristic is wrong. But just to go against the orthodoxy, some people just react to it so negatively.
This is just in your life.
Yeah, this is just in my life.
Yeah, okay. So On that, obviously, I can't speak. I can't speak for his experience, but I'll I'll deal with this in reverse order. So, as far as being called a race traitor, being called names, if you speak out against these things, like I wouldn't say that I've had attacks like this. I wouldn't say that I've been subject to attacks like this. However, I have spent a good amount of years hanging out in more woke circles, and let's just say there's a reason why I decided to put my channel on hold for a couple of years, and there's a reason why what gave me the impetus to relaunch it was one of the improv theaters that I was involved with going out of business. So although no one's ever like called me a race traitor or a coon or whatever, I can totally see the sentiment that might lead to like really shitty outbursts like that. Even though I haven't seen any personally, again, just saying. Now, as far as what he said earlier on when he was talking about critical race theory, and he said it uses a Marxist lens to look at people as oppressed and oppressors. Geez. I want to push back on this. However, the reason that I can't is because because we've covered this on this channel before. Like, critical race theory is it's a reaction against Marxism and its obsession with class, as far as the scholars who founded it are concerned. So, in theory, it really isn't a Marxist lens. It's a desire to take that Marxist lens and put it to the side so we can focus on race. However, in practice, maybe. I mean, we saw the footage of these trainers saying, like, pro-white anti-black bias in 5-year-olds. God damn it. The teachings of the founders, even if they've been corrupted, if that's how they're being applied in practice in corporate trainings, it's difficult to push back on this, and it's a shame. I really wish leftists were better at making that distinction. But right now, the way things are going, when we think about CRT, we think about white fragility, and we think about how to be anti-racist. And I've said this ad nauseum, like, even people on the left criticize those. They hate it. However, when you see footage like this, it makes it needlessly difficult to push back on this. So yeah, it's really fascinating. But let's take a look at another dimension of this and look at the numbers, because you, Frank, you said that you what was it? Yeah. The more whistleblowers there are, the less likely the public will voluntarily offer big donations. Now, as is the case with all the previous whistleblowers, there was a give, send, go set up for him. So let us take a look here. I have not looked at the numbers today on purpose, so I want this to be a reveal. I'm going to cover the screen on my end because I don't want to see the number. So when I discovered this video about 7 hours after it was released, and it was released on Sunday, and David's Give, Send, Go is currently at, drum roll, $146,000 out of a goal of 300,000. Unless Give, Send, Go is taking half of that, that's still a pretty generous payout. And again, I don't know if I think this is good or bad. It's just a really fascinating profit incentive. And just for further context, where did I put this? When I first noticed this video, it had already been out for 7 hours. And at that point, his Give, Send, Go had raised $25,000, specifically $25,600 in about 7 hours. So as far as, big donations, maybe, but, out of, if you're trying to raise $300,000 and in the space of 2 days, you're almost halfway there, man, I don't know what this whistleblower economy is going to evolve into, but it's really fascinating to watch. And also, David is doing pretty good. Well, first of all, there's this, and second of all, he attended a Turning Point USA event this weekend. Let's take a look at this right here.
David, come on stage.
So just for context, they debuted this video at Turning Point, and then David walked out. So this is just a quick hello, but let's look at it.
David. Wow, there's a lot of you. Didn't think I'd ever be doing this, but I think it's important to speak out against critical race theory in our country. This is not the future that Martin Luther King dreamed of, and it's not something that only I could have done. Speaking out is tough, but it's something that each and every one of you is capable of. Come speak to us, speak to Veritas. We will help you. We will help get your message out. And if you find your voice and ground your principles, you can be a hero too. Thank you.
Come seek him out. Click the tweet, click the whole story. You can click on the video.
All right. We've seen this. So, hard not to be cynical of those that monetize their ideology. Yeah. And another thing that, again, I'm still undecided as to whether or not I think this is good, but the notion that, like, let's say I worked at Ford, and then my boss sends a company-wide email asking everyone to put pronouns in their bio. What would my incentive be to, like, start building a case and bring it to James O'Keefe and maybe make $250,000? It's again, I want to be super charitable to David. I'm not saying he's doing this for the money. I'm just saying that he is doing it and there is money. But that in itself, Jesus Christ, this is sounding like I'm passive aggressively impugning him. This is not my intention at all. But I want to point out that for every subsequent whistleblower that goes through this process, it's going to be harder for me to be this charitable, because we'll see how long this gravy chain lasts. But again, I'm happy for David. I agree that the footage that we saw was fucked up, and I would say there is value in knowing. And of course, I don't think James O'Keefe is going to set things up like this if people come to him with things that don't pan out. Human brains are wired to recognize patterns. Yeah. My first year of life in Africa, all my caregivers were black. Yeah, that's true, Frank. Back to Canada at 2.5 years old, I would walk towards black people in public transport thinking they would take care of me. You see, that's reverse racism, Frank. It can be racist because it targets white people. But no, that's a really interesting, like, reversal of the very phenomena that was alluded to in those slides. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's really fascinating. I hope you enjoyed this. If you like this video, please like the video. If you have any questions, comments, or observations, please leave them in the comments below. I do these streams every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. I would love to see you here. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon.